Okay, so it's 1:45.
Yep.
We're ready to start, right?
Yep.
Everything good? So, Aleksandar with Troubleshooting Azure Virtual Machines.
Yep. Okay.
Go for it.
So I think we can start. Welcome to Troubleshooting Azure Virtual Machines session. My name is Aleksandar Nikolic. I'm a Microsoft MVP for Azure and also for Cloud and Data Center Management. I'm one of the founders of PowerShellMagazine.com, the site that I'm running with a couple of other PowerShell MVPs. You can find me on Twitter as Aleksandar as well. So agenda for today's session is, first, we will talk about some common problems that can happen to you when you work with Azure Virtual Machines. Then we'll go through a bunch of different troubleshooting tools that Azure exposed to us so that we can find solution for problems that we have when our VMs start behaving badly. And after that, we will go through a bunch of demos, okay? So how many of you are using Azure VMs? See, most of the room, right? So, common problems. We can put them in 4 categories. Problems that we can have during the initial deployment. Problems that we can have later with connectivity. Doesn't matter if it's Windows VM or a Linux VM, we need sometimes to connect to them remotely with GUI access, sometimes just through scripts, but we need to have connectivity to them. Or they need to have connectivity to some other resources in Azure or just on the internet. Then we might have some problems during the actual management of things. I don't know, changing disks, for example, or during the backup and the restore, encryption of a disk, right? There are a bunch of different things that can go wrong, right? And we might have some issues with the performance, right? That's another thing that can happen. So when we can go a little bit deeper into problems that can happen during deployment, one of them can be allocation failure, right? You need to find a way to first realize what is available to you, right? Sometimes you will like to use ARM template or PowerShell or Azure CLI to deploy a VM with the size or the SKU that it's not even available in your subscription or in a region that you want to use, okay? That can happen. We can have a problem to start or stop VM. Sometimes it's weird when you try to stop VM and it just doesn't want to go. So it stays there and you look at, if you do that in a portal and you see that that the line under the bell sign icon is going, and nothing is happening. So how hard is it to stop a VM? But it happens sometimes. And when we work with a VM, well, one of the features that it's really very useful is VM extension. There's a bunch of different extensions that can help you, mostly in a post-deployment part of the lifecycle of a VM, to install a DSC extension, to work with anti-malware, to run some custom Bash or PowerShell scripts on machines, to install log analytics extension. So through all that, we can have some problems even installing it or later executing those extensions. One of the extensions that can actually is created to help us in a way to troubleshoot stuff also depends on a VM agent as all those other extensions. So, so it's kind of important to know what can happen there as well. For connectivity, we might have a bunch of different issues, right? Sometimes just misconfiguration of the network security group can block you to access your VM. Sometimes the NSG is okay, you have all the rules rights, but you misconfigured a firewall. You disabled some rules in a firewall that are actually needed for you to connect. Is there a way to solve that problem? We might have a problem with a public IP address. The rule is not to expose everything you have on a public internet, but you need to have some machines there, or you will have some of them. No? Then we have an issue sometimes with the misconfiguration of RDP or SSH configuration file. Is there a way to fix that? So Azure provides a way to kind of very easily actually reset the password and fix the RDP connection or fix the SSH configuration as well. We might have a problem with booting a machine even. A machine can get a blue screen, or you might have some problems with the disk, so that you need to check the disk for failures, probably repair it. So those are all the things that can kind of block you to connect to machines. When you talk about possible management issues, we might have problem with the unexpected VM restarts. So not just the restarts that are happening because of the Azure services, which can happen sometimes, but you don't even realize mostly that, but you can update Windows, right? And then you might get into some loop with that and have a problem with the restarts. It happens. Then when we work with the disk management, we might have issues as well. Resizing or allocating, and or if we do some problem with mounting, encrypting issues as well, backup and restore, right? There is a bunch of those that can happen. When we talk about performance issues, we usually talk about disk throughput that can be low and then can be a real problem, so that everything is super slow, or the CPU usage is really high, unexpectedly high. Memory usage can be also high, or GPU processing very slow, right? So for all those things, is there a way through Azure services to find out what the problem is? So for all of those issues that can happen, Azure tries to cover that with some troubleshooting tools. Some of those tools are easy to use, and actually it's kind of easier to use them in an Azure portal than to go through some scripts. But sometimes we need to go with a PowerShell or Azure CLI to fix the problem. Sometimes it's a mixture of both, right? It really depends. And when you troubleshoot stuff, it's not a right moment to be religious about your tool. So no, I'm only Azure PowerShell guy. I'm not touching anything else, right? That's not the thing. You want to solve the problem as soon as possible, right? So you want to see what is at your disposal, what you can use. So when we talk about management, there is a couple of services and features there in Azure that can help us. The ones that are marked with a star exist actually in a section in a virtual machine blade, and they're all organized together so that it's easier for you to find it. We will do the demo for it, so you will see how that works. So one of the first that you will actually check when something is bad, or you think it's kind of bad with your machine, is that you will look at the resource health. And then you will see in the demo what they offer there. We'll go a little bit further during the demo through the details. Then we have Azure Service Health that can actually tell you, are there any problems in Azure services in general that actually affect your VM? Sometimes it can be just a problem with a region when your VM is deployed and everything else will be fine. But with this Azure Service Health system, it's easier for you to spot the problem, because it's not that you always kind of hang on Twitter and see how Twitter reacts on problems, and if people are kind of yelling and screaming that certain things are not working. That's sometimes kind of even faster to get than from the Azure service itself. Then logs are always great, and we have those activity logs that you can use to find out if something is wrong or kind of misconfigured with your machines. Maybe someone introduced some change in configuration, trying to fix something else, and then practically screwed something else in that. So you will get that information as well. And it's always good to have some metrics on things. So it's part of the monitoring, not actually troubleshooting session over VM. We have virtual machine metrics. We can look at the charts there and see some of the quality metrics that can help us to work with the problem. When we talk about connectivity, what Azure can offer to us, one of the super cool services that is amazingly helpful is Serial Console. Serial Console gives you a way to work with your VM like you attached a keyboard to that Azure VM somewhere in Microsoft data centers. It's just an amazing thing. You have really easy access to it through a GUI, through Azure Portal. Then we have boot diagnostics. And boot diagnostics give you a way to see what's actually like a screenshot of your VM. No? That can be helpful. If everything is okay, what you will see just see that login screen, right? But if something is bad, if you get a blue screen or some other issues, the machine is stuck during the booting process, it's kind of useful to see that. And you can actually download a screenshot. No? That can help through the troubleshooting process as well. Then we have a Network Watcher's IP Flow Verify feature that can tell you, is your machine able to connect to some remote resource, or is some remote source able to connect to your VM? Then we have a connection troubleshoot section in VM Blade that can also help you to kind of solve the connection problem. We'll see that a little bit later. It can tell you, for example, if there is a certain network security group that blocks access to your machine or communication from your machine to something else. For deployment problems, one of the things that can really help you is to redeploy a virtual machine. So how does that work? Redeploy means that your VM will be shut down and it will be transferred to another Azure host. So in case that problem is really not just in a VM, but maybe somehow in a host, your machine will be redeployed on a new host and with all the configurations that are already there, and probably that will fix the problem. Then, as I said, we can also reset RDP or SSH key or SSH password or configuration for a VM as well. And it's also available through a GUI, but also through PowerShell or Azure CLI. For performance issues, we have performance diagnostics that are now in preview that can help you with the memory usage or CPU utilization and all the other stuff. So let me show you a demo of a couple of tools that I mentioned: Resource Health, Connection Troubleshoot, and the Reset Password. So the scenario for the first one will be that I, on purpose, deployed a Linux VM and didn't open port 22. So let's see if Azure can help us to discover that, okay? And kind of give us a clue what to do and how to fix it. So here, when you are in VM Blade, when you need to go, when you want to troubleshoot a problem, is this support and troubleshoot section, okay? They have a bunch of different tools organized in that section. And the first one is a Resource Health. Resource Health first tells you, are there any Azure services affecting the health of your VM? It's kind of first thing, right? So this is like, okay, there are no any problems that we are aware of, but you know that you cannot connect because your SSH to that Linux VM doesn't work, okay? After that, you will go to a troubleshoot tool, and here they have two tabs. One is for common problems that frequently happen, and then they have a list of all those troubleshooting tools that we can use. So they will also give you some kind of a brief overview of changes, recent changes in your VM, telling you that something happened with the configuration, but that was done by authorized user. So maybe that's absolutely valid, legit move that someone did as admin on a machine, right? So no problem with that. And then they will give you this list of potential problems. The problem is that we have right now is we cannot connect to a VM. So when we click on the Troubleshoot button here, we have a couple of issues that we can pick. So let's go with configuration change impacted connectivity, okay? We have a troubleshoot network. Let me see if I can make it bigger. Troubleshoot network, security group, VM firewall, public IP address, or access to serial console. So let me try the first one. Someone did something, and what will happen immediately, the automated troubleshooter will start trying out to find the problem. And after a couple of seconds, in this case, it will give you this answer. So for Linux VM2, the traffic is blocked. And it's blocked by this rule in SSHD. So what they offer to you is, as recommended steps, try to find the effective security rules that apply to your machine, right? It's pretty good, right? And very fast. Another cool thing is that they give you a list of manual troubleshooting steps, usually pointing to documentation, to really good articles that explain, sometimes step by step, what you need to do to fix the problem, right? Maybe you will not get it at first and kind of pick the right one, but it's good to know that they're here, right? So if we go back here and we see that we need to kind of check the effective security rules, let's try to do that. You can actually kind of check for this kind of thing in a portal as well, but I want to kind of mix different tools. So I will show you now how to use Azure PowerShell actually to find the list of those rules that are in effect right now, okay? So first thing, before I go to that goes into that allocation kind of a problem and failure, we have two nice PowerShell commandlets to give you available VM sizes in your region. Sometimes people assume that all sizes are available everything, but that's not really true. So it's kind of making sense to run get as a VM size pointing to exact location when you want to deploy your machine to get information about it. This one is even better, I think, because people are very often not aware of that as well at all. It looks like, output looks like this, then exactly tells you what is available in your subscription and what is not. I discovered that in a hard way because my subscription didn't work. As MVP, I got some sponsorship subscription, and I didn't activate it immediately. So 2 months later, when I wanted to deploy some sizes in West Europe, they were not available. And I didn't know that they changed it because they prioritized the real customers that are kind of paying for all that, not just MVPs that have a sponsorship. So I checked with all the other MVPs that I know that usually use West Europe region with those VM sizes, everything works for them. And I was really puzzled, like what's the problem, right? With the same subscription, same rules to both of them. The only difference, and I didn't know that, is that they activated their subscription just 2 months before me, and different rules applied at that time. No, Azure just changed something and kind of restricted it. So I needed to open the support case, and then in one day, they enabled me to use another different 5 sizes. What helped me to troubleshoot all that was this commandlet, because when I tried it, I realized, okay, those SKUs are not even available in this subscription to me, and that was something that I can kind of send to them so they can check, okay? To get back to this connect part is that to find the effective network security group with PowerShell, we have commandlet for that actually called like that, get AZ effective network security group. So what you need to do first is you need to get the reference for your VM and then look at the network profile. If you look at it, it's kind of a really, really long ID for it, and I'm already interested in the ID for the network interface because that's something that I need to use. So I use this to kind of find the name for a NIC directly from PowerShell. And that's the name of the NIC that I will use later. So after that, I run it for the first time and I realize, okay, this is not very useful at first because it outputs the JSON file with everything. And that was a little bit too much. Right? What is really interesting in this output that people are usually not aware is when you set up a network security group and you pick internet there in the settings, what does that really mean? What is behind internet? What IP addresses are there? And when you run it like this, you will actually get it, which is kind of a cool. You cannot get that, as far as I know, in a GUI, but here you will get that. And here I will just use the format table to get to the effective rules, and it will give me a list, and I will realize, looking at the list, that the network security rule for port 22 doesn't exist once when I get the table. Okay, so if you look here, you can see that I only have default rules. And by default, all inbound connection is denied, okay? So what I need to do is I need to add a rule for port 22 so that I can enable SSH to my VM. And I can do that again. I'm giving you this as a reference. You will get the code after a session. You can do the same with Azure CLI if that's your preference, right? Some people like to use Azure CLI. They're usually coming from a Linux background. So I sometimes provide both codes there. And here, to enable rule for opening port 22, I need to run this. First, to get the reference to the security group for the Linux VM, and then add the rule with a higher priority than the default ones. If you do that, then it will be probably possible to connect maybe I was too fast because I just opened that port and changed the rules, so let me try again. Okay, let me check back in a Linux VM. For networking, the rule is there, so that should work. Connection timed out. Okay. And now I'm there, okay? So that was a fix for that problem. If you want to test the network communication, then you need to enable Network Watcher. And it's enough to enable Network Watcher on the region, and then after that, you can use it for all your testing. To enable that, you can easily use a new SZ Network Watcher commandlet in PowerShell. Enable that for location. You need to put that into a resource group, and all network watchers go into the same network watcher RG resource group, right? So for all those regions that you want to use it for, then you put it there. I have it already, so the only thing that I need is actually a reference to that network watcher. Then I need a reference to a VM as well, and I'm here using some Windows machine. And then I will check now, inbound, can I connect from this internet IP address to 3389 on Azure? So if everything is all right, I will get the actual rule in NSG that enables this connection, okay? So I said, thanks to a security rule that it's called RDP, it's possible to connect. If I try to connect to a port 80, for example, you will see that port 80 is actually blocked by default rule that denies all inbound connection, okay? Pretty cool. We can also check the outbound connection. So I'm checking here, has that VM connection to a Google DNS server, and what rule in my NSG group actually allows that or not. So it leaves a little bit more time. It says, okay, allow internet outbound. The default one allows that, so that's pretty cool. So this is really something that is very useful. You can do the same in a portal, going to connection troubleshoot. I will not do that, but just to make you aware that if you do that from a portal, then the network watcher extension will be added to your VM. So the first time you try this in a portal, it needs a little bit more time, just for the first time. So when you go to connection troubleshoot, your source VM is pre-selected, and then you can pick a virtual VM, or you can specify manually using URI, fully qualified domain name, or IPv4 address, and then specify a port and check a connection. Just be aware that that extension will be added to your machine. Right? So how do I can check that? Later, if I go to extensions, actually for Linux it didn't. For Windows, it actually adds one. So that's a little bit surprising, I need to tell you. But anyway, it just, that's another way to kind of go directly from a machine. What if we have wrong user credentials? You forgot a password. That was the first extension that Microsoft actually created, because they have so many support tickets when people will tell them, oh, I created this VM a month ago and I cannot remember the password. No way. So can you reset the password? And so they created this extension so that you can do that by yourself, right? To do that, you can you will get the VM access for Linux, if you work with Linux, or VM access for Windows extension that will do that thing for you. And you can do that, again, in a portal if you go to Reset Password. And you have a couple of options here. If you pick Reset Password, it will actually reset the password, but also it will reset RDP or SSH connection to default state, default values. You can also reset the SSH public key or reset configuration only. So in case that something is wrong with the RDP configuration or with the SSH configuration, that will fix that problem. The interesting thing is for a reset password, if you specify a new username and the new passwords, it will create another user that has the admin rights on Windows or sudo rights on Linux, okay? So that's very convenient from a portal, but you can also do that from Azure CLI or Azure PowerShell using AZVM user update, for example, here for Azure CLI, and then it will update the user or create a new one. That's good. Or you can use directly VM access for Linux extension, and what is really interesting here, that you can create this with the same command, like this one, AZVM extension set, when you specify the resource group and your VM name, the extension name that you will use, VM access for Linux, who is a publisher version, and then in the settings, you specify a settings JSON file. So depending on the content of that file, you can do one of those three settings that we have seen there. You can just reset SSH configuration to default value, if you say reset SSH true, or change the connection credentials, or SSH key. So you can have kind of a three. Also, this is a little bit problematic because you will have hard-coded password. So that's not really something that we will use in a production kind of thing. Let's try to misconfigure SSHD configuration and to see how that affects the problem and how can we fix that one, okay? So Let me go to Cloud Shell. Okay. A little bit slow. Okay, Shift Insert to insert the command. Okay. So I'm there. Let me clean, right? Sudo nano etc ssh sshd config. And I will go now and set allow password authentication to no. Okay. No. X. Yes. That's it. And system. Restart SSHD service. And exit. Now if I want to connect again, no, that was not the same demo user. 51 415. I will get permission denied, okay? So that's the problem that I cannot solve anymore connecting to machine and fixing that. So one of the ways to fix this is to go here to reset password, click on reset configuration only, and they will change there that no to yes and restart the service, okay? So that's one of the ways to do it. Let me show you another one. We can use also command line to do that. There is a commandlet in CLI called azvm user reset SSH that can do the same, but it's a little bit more interesting to do that in a serial console. So let me show you how serial console works with Linux. So when you go to serial console here, for serial console to work, you need to have a local admin on a machine, on Windows or on Linux. And it will give you access to the text console that you can use to run commands. So here I'm waiting to get a connection to my Linux VM. Then from here, from serial console, I will then open the SSHD config file, change and allow password authentication, restart the service, and then the SSH will be available to me again. For some reason, maybe it's scared or too shy for a demo. Okay, so now it works. I need to log in. I'm there. Sudo nano etc ssh config. If I go a little bit down, it's not that nicely colored like in this one. You see, okay, password authentication. Change this to yes. Control X, save, and that's it. Okay, system, CDL. password. And I'm good. So now I fixed through the serial console the problem. You can use that for so many different things. So one of the things that we want to run, it's not just for troubleshooting, but in general, is to run scripts in our Azure VMs. There's a couple of different ways to do that. One is a custom script extension. And for reference, I put all these things here because it's important to understand how those things are working. The custom script extension is actually used more for a post-deployment. If you want to run your own custom PowerShell scripts on Windows or Linux or Bash scripts on Linux. It can be used in all deployment methods with ARM templates, with Azure PowerShell, Azure CLI, with the REST, all through the Azure portal. If you use Azure portal, you can actually even use your local file. If you use the other system, then the file needs to be publicly available somehow from the, not publicly available, but just available from, let's say, Azure storage or from a GitHub repo. And then it will just download and run scripts on it. You can also use a hybrid Runbook Worker, which is really interesting here that those can be used on both Azure VMs and non-Azure VMs. The idea behind it was not to create a tool for troubleshooting, but it can be used for troubleshooting purposes as well, right? The good thing here is that you can run multiple scripts there. Just be aware that by default, it runs as a local system account. You can run all those other things in Azure Automation, but I'm saying one of the things how you can do it, it is hybrid worker. Also, that was not the main reason why they even created it. One of the main reasons why they created it is that you can use all the scripts that are hosted in Azure Automation to run those scripts in your on-premises environment. But you can very easily turn your Azure VMs into hybrid Runbook workers so that they can run scripts against themselves or the other machines that they can access in Azure. You've seen the first demo of Serial Console when we use a Serial Console in Linux, which was a little bit easier to run. And it runs all those commands in Azure VMs, gives you access to the test console. Again, runs as a local account, and it's used mostly when you don't have any network access to your machines. So if something is really bad, for example, NIC is not working properly on your machine, you can use a Serial Console to connect and try to fix the problem. All the other ways to run scripts on it will fail in that case, but Serial Console will work nicely with it. So let me show you a Serial Console when we will use it with the Windows, and the scenario will be I will log into Windows VM, and then I will disable a NIC and see how that affects me, right? I will immediately lose a connection, right? There is no other way to connect anymore to it unless you use a Serial Console, okay? So let's go to the portal, to dashboard, connect to a Windows VM. So now when I'm in Windows VM, okay, I don't need that. Network connections. Let me go to view network, no. Network properties, change adapter options, and then disable NIC. You have a feeling that nothing happened, really, right? I cannot do anything, right? Everything is frozen. So how can I now get the access back to this machine that doesn't even have enabled NIC? Before Serial Console, that will be kind of really hard. Now with Serial Console, it's much faster and easier. So with Windows, it's a little bit more complicated than with Linux. They have created this special administration console called SAC that will start now. And once when I get a connection to a SAC, I need to create a channel. Oh, channel is ready. So CMD command is now available. So I can create a channel in a way that I run CMD command. And it tells me that command prompt session successfully launched. New channel is created. So, and interesting here is that it's case sensitive. Yep. So now I'm in, once when I logged into a local account, I'm now at the command prompt connected to my Windows Azure VM that doesn't have enabled NIC. How can I fix the problem? I can do that with the net shell if you are a lover of a command prompt, but I think the PowerShell is kind of easier to do that. So how can we go to a PowerShell? Very easily. We type PowerShell, and now I'm in PowerShell. How can I check the status of my adapter? Get net adapter. And it says here, if it worked nicely, there are some limitations here that it's disabled, okay? Nothing new, this is what we knew, so let's fix that. I will say get net adapter, name, Ethernet, enable net adapter. And now if I repeat, you will get the status is up. So now I enabled through Serial Console a NIC on that VM, and now I can again connect and work with it properly. And that machine can also connect. All right? So that's super, super easy. We can use Serial Console, for example, if we misconfigure a firewall rules. So for example, someone by mistake disable rules for enabling RDP connection. You can very easily then go to a Serial Console, find those rules, and then re-enable them, and things will work. Serial Console is really super, super powerful. Very good stuff. There's one interesting way to run scripts. That feature is called run command. And it's now used by something that is kind of in preview still, that I will show you a little bit later. So this is why I want you to kind of know about this one. It also depends on that VM agent on a machine. And to function properly, the outbound connections over 443 to Azure IP addresses is needed to get, it will work, but it will not give you output if this is not possible. So if you really, really strictly configured your VM not to have that, then don't be surprised the output will not be there. The run of scripts will run, but you will have that issue. A little bit of a problem with this command is, run command feature is, it has lots of different restrictions. And one of the really painful one is that you cannot cancel a script. So if you run it and something is bad, and it just runs and runs and runs, you need to wait for an hour and a half for it to time out, which really sucks, right? And I hope that they will work on something new to kind of overcome some of those restrictions. It's also not one of the really fast stuff, right? You need to wait even for Hello World for a minute to show up, right? But if you really need it and you need this access, then at least we have it. So let me show you a demo of run command. So run command is, by the way, available to you also from a portal. and if you go here in operations part, the last option is run command. And run command runs a custom script, if you want it, called run PowerShell script. This is the ID for it when you specify it. And then you can point to your script, or you can run some of those pre-built ones that they created for us. What is really interesting is that, for example, RDP settings, if you click on it, you want to run it, you actually get access to a code. So you can see what is actually executed once when you click on run, okay? So if I click on run right now, I get this output, and then we'll need to wait a little, and then we will get results here. This particular command, what it does, it checks the settings, and then it sets everything to default values, right? So in a way, it does that reset thing that we had with that other feature called reset password. Probably they use this thing behind the scenes, okay? So for run command, here, when we are in a command line, it would be useful to kind of find out what's possible without going to a GUI, right? So the first thing is here, how to get the list of those built-in scripts that you can run. They have a commandlet with a really strange name, get azvm run command document, right? I don't understand the reason for the naming of document, to be honest, but this is what it is. So if I run this, I will get information about the what is the OS that can be applied to, the label, description, and or I can just get the IDs. Those are the ones that you will use in your scripts to get the reference to it. So to run it, and also if you kind of specify directly one of them, like here, let me show you with the Windows Update, and then you run it, you will get the script. So you see those properties, script 1, 2, 3, those are the lines of the script. So the whole script is actually here in properties. The same works if you try to check with the Azure CLI, then, for example, for this one, you will get all the commands that participate when you enable PowerShell remoting on a machine using that script. So to run it, you need to use invoke Azure VM run command, specify a resource group, the name of VM, and then command ID, right? So one of those are predefined, or you can use run PowerShell script for PowerShell, or run shell script for bash scripts, and then you will point to a script path, and then even you can pass some arguments to that script, and it will be sent to a VM and then executed there. What's really interesting, when you use Azure CLI, they have a scripts parameter that can have inline bash script in it. So for example, all this is needed just to, for example, install nginx on a machine, on a Linux machine. So run command can be really useful for certain things. Let me just show you, I think that we got the output here. So this is the output of that script. So not domain join, this is the first thing that they check there, and then they didn't change anything, they just output everything because RDP is properly configured on this machine. If it wasn't, then there will be some output here telling you, oh, we changed this 0 to 1 to enable it, or vice versa. Here is one thing that is very often needed, and as you can see, it's not easy. So the thing is that you might have a problem with the OS disk on your VM. How can you fix that problem? For example, you need to fix the disk because there are some file system errors on it. You need to detach that disk from your source VM and attach it to some VM that is called recovery VM as a data disk, do the changes on that data disk, and then reattach it from recovery machine and reattach it to the first one. It's not easy, right? Lots of steps. Like as you can see, like 7 different steps here, lots of things to do. Very often you might make a mistake, really, right, for all that. So to fix the problem and to make that better, Microsoft is now working on something called VM Repair Azure CLI Extension that should automate all of this for you so that you don't need to do through all these steps. They will do everything for us, okay? You just need to point this out. This is my source VM. Take its OS disk, create a repair VM, attach this to that one, then it's on you to fix the problem. And when the problem is fixed, they will do restore for you and reattach that disk as an OS disk to your original machine. Oh, pretty cool. So let me show you how that works. So for that, we will go here to Azure Cloud Shell and VM Repair, I think I have, with some of the steps that are needed. And here is one thing that I discovered very recently, actually this morning during Thomas' session. I was really unhappy that I can control the font in a console, but I cannot control the font in editor if I go here and change the font size. See? Not good, right? I mean, this is okay for medium, but this is just too small. If you want to fix that, go here, command palette, type font, and then zoom in. That's cool, right? Nice? I said, like, it must be somewhere, really, right? So here, I have some of the commands for checking the existence of extension and how it works. So I have it already on my machine, AZVM extension list. I have a couple of extensions, and one of them is VM Repair. If you don't have it, you need to run AZ extension add -n or --name VM Repair. And for now, this feature only exists in Azure CLI. It doesn't exist in PowerShell. We'll see what will happen. Hopefully, they will add it to PowerShell as well. I think the main idea here is actually to automate everything, even from a GUI, so that people can kind of have all of this run behind the scenes for them once when they're done with everything. So when you look at the help for this, AZVM Repair, you can see that they support a couple of different commands: create, list scripts, restore, and run. In other words, they support kind of 2 different things here. One is to attach that OS disk to that repair VM and then do the restore, but they also allow you to run scripts on that machine. And for that, they are using the run command behind the scenes. What is good here is that the repository with scripts is public, and they expect the other product groups in Microsoft and community will contribute and add some cool features there, right? So to get that all running, you need to run AZVM Repair create. Just give them the resource group and the name of your source, and they will, and the password for repair VM, and everything will be created for you. Once when you are done, you will do some steps to check, mount that OS disk that it's now data disk on this machine, fix the problem, and then do restore. Let me show you one more thing before I wrap up the session, and that's boot diagnostics. I promised to show you that, but I think I didn't. So let me show you the easiest way to blue screen your machine. That's pretty cool. So let me fix that, close this, go to my Windows VM here, connect to it. Okay, connect. Okay, so I need here a PowerShell. So do you know how I can blue screen machine with one word in a PowerShell, even in a command prompt? It doesn't have to be PowerShell. There is one word to kill it. This is how it's called, win init. It already exists as a process, but you cannot have two. So what happens is this. No more machine. Okay? Funny? Some think so. Am I there? Yes, I am. Refresh. Come on. Don't break my heart now. Yeah. This machine should not exist. This is a funny thing that you never ever want to see a blue screen, and now when I want it, they don't want to give me. That's cool. Okay, let me try one more time, just to go somewhere else. Yeah. Okay, so as you can see, with that command, I blue screened the VM. So now they will kind of do that. If I do the refresh, they will change this percentage, just like 15 as then it will go to a boot and then it will boot. So this is just a way to blue screen and then restart your VM. It's not bad for testing, really. It's not a bug. This is how it works, really. You cannot have two win init processes on machines. If by mistake you create another one, okay, restart a machine, right? That's the thing. This is how it works. If you go to serial, not here, but to a serial log for the stuff, you can see the serial log there as well, right? So I needed something to kind of make the blue screen, and was thinking, okay, this is something that I used before. So thank you for attending the session. I think I went a little bit over time, or I'm just there. So I'm open for questions now, but I'm also here today and tomorrow, and during the networking party as well. So any questions? Okay, if not, then later. Thank you very much.